Cat down the road writes, "You are a prick." Igor Wu writes, "Tell you what, you can just talk and talk and talk." A second video to the 13 reasons why the Game Changer film lies. In this video, I wanted to start it out by kind of doing a mean tweet play on what Jimmy Kimmel will do on his show. So we're gonna go through a few of the comments I've gotten on the very first one, see what they are and how they sound. So Cat down the road writes, "Reason number one, you are a prick." Joshua writes, "It's probably misleading. Interesting choice of words." Igor Wu writes, "Tell you what, you can just talk and talk and talk." Yeah, I can. Haley Am writes, "We'll see whose diet is better if the earth is still around and your heart disease kicks in." Yeah, I guess we will. We'll see how that goes. Joseph Fair writes, "You have no idea what you're talking about. The bottom line is the vegan diet is better for everyone as well as the planet. Your opinion is invalid. There's a great deal of science behind the vegan concept. You, as most people, don't know that's biblical as well. Read the book of Genesis 1:29, which, by the way, I did read, and it does tell us that God made seeds and fruits for us to actually have as man." Then he says he would gladly discuss further. It's reasonable. All kidding aside, I appreciate the comments. The video's done really well. It's been one of our most viewed videos on the channel. And I think part of it is because there's a lot of buzz. The people who've produced Game Changers, if you look at the current information out there, have said that they're not trying to push a plant agenda. They're simply out there just outlining facts and science. But then when you look at the film, from my perspective, it seems like it's very much an agenda propaganda film for vegan and supporting basically eating plant-based diet and not eating any animal food. So what I thought I would do is if we just jump into a few of the points that I talked about in the past, as well as some of the more common points that have bubbled up since I put out part one of this video, we'll just talk about the science and some of the ideas around these points. So in my part one, I talked about the gladiators. The gladiators were literally called barley men. They were slaves in the Roman Empire. They were basically forced into fighting. When you look at the gladiator lifestyle, they typically had a career of 1.5 to 2 years. They typically died anywhere from 26 to 28 years of age. They found that if these gladiators gained weight, put on body fat, they could handle superficial wounds from weapons like swords much better than if they were super lean and metabolically fit and healthy, and they fed them a diet of slaves. So for people who are arguing, and especially in this film when they position it where these gladiators were like the ultimate fighters, maybe you can argue that that wasn't what they were trying to show in the film. But for those of you who kind of interpreted that they were ultimate fighters, it doesn't make a lot of sense that they would say that they would feed these ultimate fighters this kind of diet. So Morgan Mitchell was the Australian that they showcased in the film, and she was touted as being a vegan athlete, that she was able to run extremely fast because of the plant-based diet she was on. The irony of all this is since she's switched over to the plant-based diet, she has not even been able to qualify with high schoolers in American 400-meter races. There's actually a lot of news out now also about her mental health significantly deteriorating. In fact, there's an article in Australian Times QT that talks about how she's crying before and after practice and having literally mental breakdowns. When you think about it, a plant-based diet is going to limit the essential nutrients you need for mental health. You're not getting B12, you're missing out on DHA, there's a lot of other deficiencies that can occur, and we see a lot of people with neurological issues occurring after they've been on the diet for a period of time. There's a point in the film where they talk about complete protein. They talk about how James was surprised to discover that you could actually get all of the complete protein from a plant-based diet. You didn't need animal foods, and that it was kind of misleading to him that you would need animal foods to get complete protein. But what they don't realize and what they don't actually state in the film is that yes, almost every plant food might have trace amounts of the amino acids to make a complete protein. The only foods that are really digestively available, there's a whole digestibility score they've made. If you go to the FDA and you look at their food recommendations, they'll list off complete proteins. At the top of the list, you're gonna see animal foods, whey, beef. You see soy in there fairly high, but again, remember, soy is goitrogenic. There's a lot of other issues with soy in terms of negative health impacts. And if you're really talking about taking on a diet that's going to support animal-based and really promote the well-being of the planet, soy is one of the most genetically modified toxic crops there is on the planet. It's highly monocropped, meaning it's grown in large quantities as a single crop, destroying the soil, wrecking the nutritional value of the soil. It's not regenerative the way that they do it. A lot of it is shipped over vast distances, which is pumping carbon emissions into the atmosphere. There's a bunch of issues with soy that literally it doesn't make any sense in terms of the benefits in looking at it from a health perspective as well as a well-being for the planet perspective. Then there's a statement in the film about meat and animal foods being inflammatory and that being a problem, that they carry new 5GC and that they have lipopolysaccharides and heme iron, which is kind of crazy because new 5GC, there's literally no human studies that show that this is inflammatory to human beings. No human studies. They did 1 or 2 studies with rats where they found there was a trigger in their autoimmune situation, but the model was completely contrived. It was not controlled. It wouldn't be considered scientific in today's science. Eating meat does not necessarily indicate that you're going to increase levels of new 5GC, nor do we even have studies that show that new 5GC in humans is toxic. To say that the new 5GC compound is coming from eating animal foods and animal foods are inflammatory, the link there is just not good science. Lipopolysaccharides are bacteria in the gut. They're not actually a component of meat. We have found that people who have leaky gut can have issues with inflammation with lipopolysaccharides, but there is no link that meat is causing the inflammation or that it's boosting the impact of lipopolysaccharides within human bodies. This third nutrient is really interesting and ironic because roughly 25% of vegans are anemic, meaning they're deficient in iron. Because they're eating plant form iron, they actually lack sufficient iron. Iron aids in dopamine, serotonin, it's a precursor for the enzymes to produce those neurotransmitters. It also supports oxygen flow and hemoglobin. Iron deficiency is no joke. Heme iron is the animal form. Regular iron that comes from plants is not heme iron. Heme iron is much more bioavailable, much more available for human beings. There are some studies in rodents that have shown if they're calcium deficient, giving them excess heme iron can lead to colon cancer. But again, when they return the calcium levels, those risks diminish of the cancer, and they're in rodents. And again, as we mentioned, the majority of people on a plant-based diet, they are much more at risk of having an iron deficiency than actually getting sufficient amounts of iron, which is critical for optimal health. Another thing the film also mentions is they quote Dr. Dean Ornish, his study, which was the intensive lifestyle changes for reversal of coronary heart disease. They say this was really the only study that's ever existed that has shown that eating a plant-based diet can reverse coronary heart disease. There's a couple issues with this study. One, they don't mention this, obviously. There were 20 participants in the study, 20. 2, the group in the study versus the control group was 34 pounds overweight on average, comparatively speaking. There was weight for them to lose. Like they actually were in a situation where their health was in lower quality compared to the actual group that they were comparing in the study. And they gave the group in the study support on quitting smoking, exercising, emotional support groups. There's so many lifestyle factors in here that blended in the study, not to mention it was 20 people total, that it just seems like an outrageous study to make. Like tell me it's really science when you're talking about 20 people and you have these many differences in the variables of the control group versus the actual study group and all these additional support elements. Science. Dr. Mark Thomas, a geneticist at the University College at London, basically said the brain is a fussy organism and that it needs glucose to survive. And yeah, it does need glucose. The brain does need glucose. The irony of the whole statement he mentioned there was 2/3 of the brain actually runs on ketones and prefers ketosis, ketone molecules, fat, not glucose. High glucose actually leads to way more oxidation. Oxidation is damage that's produced in the Krebs cycle in your body. We see quite a bit of information out there as well as studies that have been done on human beings with much lower oxidative stress in their bodies when they run on a ketogenic diet. All of that would have been fine, but he didn't mention ketones. And he acted like he was talking about the brain and how important glucose was for the brain, as if that was the most important element. There's a point in the movie where they talk about getting B12 and they're like, where can we get this? Because this is a big deficiency for many people on a plant-based diet. It's largely only found in animal foods. They go on to say that humans probably needed to eat dirt to get B12. B12 is important for neurological function, for the myelin sheaths in your nerves. You absolutely need B12 and you really don't get it from the dirt. I don't think we evolved eating dirt to get B12. There's a few more points I want to mention. Tim Shea used to be the Vegan Prince, AKA Vegan Prince, was actually filmed for this documentary. I don't even want to call it a documentary, but we'll call it a documentary. There's a few more points I want to mention. Tim Schaaf, who was actually filmed for this film, is referred to as formerly as the vegan prince. They actually filmed him, and he was a classic example of someone who switched from a standard diet to a vegan diet. He saw a honeymoon phase where he felt much better. He was able to feel just more nutritious and just light and clean, and that lasted for a couple of years. But they shot him, I believe he mentioned that they shot him in roughly 2015. The film came out late 2018 or 2019. And he said that he didn't want to be in the film because he had since switched from being a vegan back to eating animal foods because he was dealing with major health issues that he needed animal foods to resolve. There's a gentleman who talks about gorillas and how they don't need any animal foods to be incredibly powerful and strong. And if you look at a gorilla's gut, it's very protruding. They have a huge pouch, cecum pouch, the size of a football, that can be used to digest fiber, to ferment fiber and convert it into fat in their bodies that human beings do not have. They have a much bigger colon to allow for that to happen. And you know what else gorillas do? They eat their own poop. They eat their own poop to get B12 from the actual waste and to actually reprocess that. Humans don't do this, and I don't think we want to be eating our own poop to get B12.
Dude, what the fuck?
There's one last claim in the film that I want to wrap on, and that is the idea that 83% of the world's farmland is being wasted away by animal agriculture from meat and dairy, and it's only providing 18% of the world's calories. The irony of this is the vast majority of the land that's being used for animal agriculture is non-tillable land. It's not soil you can actually grow crops on. The other thing that is mentioned often in this argument is that the water usage is extremely high for animals, that cows are over consuming water. If you look at the statistics on growing almonds though, there's a significantly higher amount of water being used by almonds. And on top of that, the vast majority of water that's consumed by cattle is actually rainwater that comes naturally from the cycle of the earth and the rain. And so to say that they're wasting water, which they also urinate back into the soil, which can then be used for plants that are grown there that they're eating, is kind of misleading in my opinion. So I hope that was enjoyable. Part 2, 13 reasons why the Game Changer film lies. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you thought about the film. Let me know if you've seen the Chris Kresser, Joe Rogan interview, if you've seen the Chris Kresser, James Wilkes debate on Joe Rogan, if you've read some of the articles out there. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And if you've got more mean comments, you can throw them my way as well. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you all.